Hello, and welcome to No Peeking, where I try to solve puzzles blindfolded. Today, I'm going to be attempting the Mixup Cube. Thanks to everyone who suggested Mixup Cube blind, and especially Will Faust, who was the first to suggest it, and who also created a very well-written tutorial that you can check out if you're not familiar with 3-style. The link is in the description below. And thanks to Jason White for lending me his puzzle. The Mixup Cube appears very similar to a normal 3x3. And it does turn in all the ways that a normal 3x3 does. But you can also perform half a slice move and then continue to turn, like this. That has no effect on the way that we solve corners, but it has 4 major impacts on the way that we solve edges. First, there are now 18 pieces in this group because we've added the 6 centers. Second, each piece now has 4 orientations that can be shot to, as opposed to only 2 on 3x3. Third, you can get a parity case where only 1 piece is twisted. And fourth, you can get a parity case where only 2 pieces are swapped. So now that we understand the puzzle, let's take a look at the method, starting with corners. I solve corners the exact same way that I do in 3 blind, so there's nothing to learn there. But I'm very careful to always execute corners last. It's more difficult to turn the puzzle when the centers and edges haven't been solved, so executing corners first would just take longer and would drastically increase your chances of DNFing. Let's move on to the tougher part, centers and edges. To execute centers and edges, I use 3-style, which sounds daunting at first, and it takes a little practice to get used to. But if you know 3-style for edges, it's not too difficult. You just have to implement half slice moves. Let's take a look at some examples. This is a pretty easy case. Using buffer UF, we trace to BR and then the D center. And in order to solve the buffer, we want to have the side towards the F face. So we can use an interchange on the M slice. We'll do an M prime 1.5 and then insertion U prime R prime U, and then undo the interchange, undo the insertion. This is a little trickier. We can track this to LD on the F side, and then that goes to the R center to solve the buffer we want to do, the side pointing towards U. So I'll set this up doing an L prime, S prime half, and then it's this case with an interchange of U, and then an insertion M half, E half, M half prime, and then undo and undo. Now we know how to execute edges and centers, but how do we memorize and track them? To memorize these pieces, I use 2 letters for each piece. For edges, the first letter is the normal letter in my lettering scheme. So if I was using SPEFs, this would start with B. And then the second letter depends on its orientation. If it's the normal 3x3 orientation, like this, it gets my buffer letter. So in SPEFs, that's C. So this would be BC. If it's the orientation 90 degrees clockwise, it gets the other letter on the buffer, so I. So this one is BI. Then this is MC, and then this is MI. And the same applies to all edges. For centers, the first letter is the face that it's on. So this starts with U. And then the second letter is the face that it's pointing towards. So this would be UB, UR, UF, and UL. And the same applies to all the other centers. So here's a scramble. How do we track it? First, I want to find the orientation with the most solved centers. So there's white and green. So I'll set it like this if I'm using SPEFs. Tracing from the buffer, that goes here, which I'd memorize as TC, and then that goes to the L center. Now I have a choice to make. There are 4 orientations that I could pick. I probably won't do these 2, since they would set up to a twisted orientation at the next edge. So I'll pick between these 2. It doesn't really matter. For this case, I'd probably pick LU, since it makes a nicer alg with the buffer and BR. Now I'll continue to trace. So that goes here, and then here, and then here, and then this is my buffer. So I want to remember which position this is in, because you can get your buffer twisted with nothing else. so I need to make sure that's solved at the end. So I would have white here. And when I break into a new cycle, I like to break into it on a center so that at the end of the cycle, I can pick which way this buffer will go back in. That will prevent me from having to do an alg at the end. But if you have to break into a cycle on an edge, or for some other reason your buffer's twisted at the end, you can fix it pretty easily. So you can do a cycle with your buffer and two centers, and then rotate one of the centers, and then undo that. And it fixes the problem. And to fix the other kind of parity with two edges swapped, I rotate and then do m prime half, u prime, m prime, e prime half, m prime half, u, m prime, e prime half, 5 times. And then rotate back and do this 3 cycle. And now it's solved. All right, the method is ready. So it's time to do some attempts. Okay, let's do this. Ah! I messed up somewhere. I think that's done. Ah! What? This is it. No! What? Yes! Got it! Finally! After 5 DNFs, I got a success. But you already know, it could be faster. Yes. Thank you for watching, and let me know what puzzles you'd like to see me solve blindfolded.